go ahead and get started. So welcome to this week's CybHER Conversation. We are so happy that you can join us, whether you're live or watching this in our recorded version on YouTube. We thank you. My name is Katie Shuck, and I am the CybHER Chief of Strategy. We also have with us one of our founders, Pam Rowland, who is a professor at Dakota State University. And back in 2013, she and a fellow professor, Dr. Ashley Podorotsky, founded CybHER in order to motivate, educate, and empower, young girls in cybersecurity. And so we're so glad that they did. Throughout the years, we've impacted over 23,000 girls across the United States and now around the world with our virtual programs. We also have with us Kanthi Narokonda, who is CybHER's Chief of Operations, and she is going to be overseeing the question and answer period today. So if any point you have a question you would like to ask Amber, you can do so by going down to the Q&A that you find at the bottom of the screen. Type your question in, and when the Q&A period comes up, Kanthi and I will see those, and we'll make sure that those questions get asked. Sadly, we have not always had enough time to get all of our questions answered, but we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. But without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest today, Amber Schroader, who is the CEO and founder of Paraben Corporation. And Amber is a dynamo in the field of digital forensics. I can't say it any other way. I've heard her speak multiple times, got to meet her last year at the CybHER camp that we held on DSU's campus, and was so glad to do in-person programs then. But she has developed different software applications, courses, different programs to help with the collection of and the recovery of data in different digital forensic environments. And she has just, you can't say enough about her work with digital evidence. So many different types of digital devices, from smartphones to gaming systems to cloud services. We are so happy to have her with us here and sharing her expertise and her background. So Amber, I am going to pass it on to you and let you share your story.
Hey, what a great intro. It's always great when people say positive things like that. So I'm so grateful to be here. My experience coming out to the live conference was probably the best thing of 2019 ever. And it was going out to South Dakota and getting to talk to a whole bunch of you girls out there about kind of my journey and path to get to where I was. So you'll see kind of a funky little background behind me. I'm currently living on a farm, but the cool part about living on this farm is I'm about to turn it into a cyber environment, and it's going to turn into an IoT farm in the next year as I transform it to learn the best way to grow things using technology. So it's just one more area that you never know when cyber is going to apply. So I actually have a couple slides that I wanted to show you, because I want to show you girls that I'm like a normal, real person. And the best way to do that is I have my picture from junior high in my slides. So here we go. Let me get this out for you. So the biggest thing when you start thinking digital forensics and what happens with all of it is, why do people get involved in it? It's not something you hear about every day. And I always wanted to be Wonder Woman. Like, it was the biggest thing ever for me. And it doesn't matter if it's like old school Wonder Woman or the new Wonder Woman. I just wanted to be her. And I wanted to be her because she was really fighting for justice. And that meant so much to me to know that I could make a difference every day in my job. So when I look at that big field of cyber that you guys have heard about through all these great things that you're watching on YouTube or you're attending live, I was like, these are a lot of choices. It was very overwhelming. And I realized that there was one choice in there that kind of hit all the areas. And if you look at my cool little graphic I have there with all the little circles, all the sections that they intersect, that's where digital forensics is. Because each one of these areas requires digital forensics to collect that data and bring it in so that they can find the answers or the truth inside all of that data. And I was like, that's the part I want to be part of. That's where I want to find and make my mark. And I've done it through making technology and doing examinations and participating in the field to make sure that I'm really finding those little pieces that are going to make the difference between either guilt or no guilt, or innocence or guilty. You've got choices. So the big thing for all of you is you're trying to decide, and your parents ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I have no idea. You were totally normal. No one knew exactly what they wanted to be. So the big part is know that there's lots of potential out there for you in these fields. I am a dyslexic person with ADD. So even though I have learning disabilities and things that might make me really difficult to work in particular fields, the field of cyber and digital forensics in general was the perfect fit for me. I have always done things backwards. I even tie my shoes backwards. I was trying to teach my own kids how to tie their shoes and they couldn't figure it out because I kept showing them how to do it backwards. That was why I was so good at digital forensics. It's doing everything backwards. And it was a perfect match. So know that there is a place for you, no matter what struggles you have or whatever differences that make you up. There's something out there that will make an impact for you in a field. And this is kind of what made that for me. So as I promised, that's me at 14. That's my junior high ID. And I was crazy shy. I hated when people would talk to me in the classroom or ask me to read out loud, because being dyslexic, it's a lot of anxiety. And I was just worried. I was not finding the confidence. I was very afraid to talk to different people. And with all of that, there was one thing that made it so I made it through all of those rough years of junior high and high school, and that was my curiosity. When I was 14, I volunteered for a job that I was asked to do, and you'll see that there's a little machine in my slide, and that's a shrink wrapper. So I started shrink wrapping product for a company. I took a job after school and they needed help, and I said, I'll figure out how to do this. And I learned how to do it. And then they said, now we have something new. And I said, here, let me do this. I will learn how to do it. The big thing is that curiosity and learning made it so I worked my way through that company from the age of 14 to the age when I was 21, and I was a vice president at that company. I learned every job along that way. I ran them through different startups. I'm sure you guys have heard that. And I helped them grow into a huge company and had that great opportunity just because I always said yes, and I knew I could figure it out. I wasn't afraid to fail, because at the end of the day, I knew I was going to learn. And that curiosity and ability to think through that project or plan or whatever they gave me, because there were some interesting things I'm like, I have never done that. I was able to find a way and a path that I could be successful at it. And I also learned that I look way better without bangs than I did with bangs. So that was also an important learning aspect between junior high and being an adult. Oh, hang on, we'll go the other way. So here are your different areas for opportunity that might exist out there that you might not know of. If you like being out in the field, digital forensics has stuff you can do out there. You can go out and you can walk into places and collect all the little different digital things out there. And there are jobs that fit for that, that you're not necessarily always sitting in a chair every day. You're going to look at computer screens, but you may not be sitting in a chair every day. There's also sitting in a chair and doing it in a lab, where you're going to pull up a whole bunch of different devices that you might have, and you're going to work through them and kind of think through the questions and scenarios that might be finding the data that you're looking for on devices like this. You can design technology. That was an area that I like to do, because I was the one person in my family that took my mom's toaster apart, put it back together, and made it do more than just toast. And that was part of my goal, is to how do I make something better? Or there's even corporate work. If you wanted to always work for Amazon, they have digital forensic people. Every company you can think of has digital forensic people that work there. And so you know there are lots of different ways that you can find an opportunity for different jobs out there. And the whole goal, I think, of all these presentations you might be watching and seeing what all of us do for a living, is that one day you're going to be able to answer that question of what you want to be when you grow up. And you're going to find that job that just fits for you. which is always the good goal. So this is why it impacts you though. What's the most common evidence items? And I bet you guys are all going to recognize these because a lot of you might be doing virtual learning right now, and you're probably on your phones a lot. You're doing a lot of emails with your teacher. You might have your Chromebooks and different things like that. Those are the most common evidence items that you're going to see in general. So they're things that you're using all the time. So you're going to be familiar and okay with interacting with them. The cool part though is all the little digital investigation secrets that kind of sit inside them. So I want to give you guys some examples of that. Let's look at some of that cool data that we see in digital forensics that's different than what you see when you use it. So here's Snapchat. I'm sure many of you have used it before and you think that all that data is just gone forever because that's what they tell you. That's the cool part about being in digital forensics. All the data they say is gone, we figure out ways to get it back. And this is data that comes off of those different phones and devices and out of that app that says, I can tell you exactly who your friends are, what snaps you've done, received snaps, and the chats that have happened on this device. Because if I'm trying to find out details, I need to find the information inside those apps. And all those different apps and things you use on your phone keep this information that get recovered by digital forensic people to be able to put together the puzzle of whatever they're investigating. So not only do we have Snapchat, but we have Instagram. And I know that lots of you have Instagram. It's probably one of my favorite social medias. And because it is very picture-based, all the pictures that we look at and we like, and all the people that we chat in there all come out in that digital evidence side. And that's part of what we get to spend our time with. So right now, you have to look in the tiny window that is my video. I'm working on this project right now, which is called a POPL. And I don't know if you guys have seen a POPL, but this is a way that I can share social media details with this tiny button here. That tiny button is now a piece of digital evidence that I need to figure out how I can get that information out of. And I found out about a POPL while I was watching a TikTok video. So you never know where you're going to find out about the next hot topic and research thing that's going to come and be involved in a potential digital evidence. And so I make sure I spend time in all these things every day as part of research. This is one of my favorite research things, and I imagine many of you are going to watch this on YouTube, so I know you're already on YouTube. So I spend probably a good hour on YouTube learning new things every day because there's great resource of people. And I know you're thinking, holy crap, she's old and she's spending time on YouTube. I learned how to drywall on YouTube just last weekend. So you never know what you're going to learn. This is my kid's YouTube information. So this is my son. He's 17 years old, so he's a teen. He knows I looked at his YouTube, so don't worry about it. But he had in his YouTube history how to make a fire using only an orange, how to fold a shirt in under 2 seconds, how to sneak out at night, so he's making bad choices right there, and how to get money from your parents. So obviously, as his parent, I needed to go and look in his YouTube history a little more and have a couple conversations. The first rule, I quit buying oranges because nobody wants him to start a fire using an orange. I checked to see if he was folding his shirts. He was not, so he obviously did not subscribe to that channel. He should have. He needs to fold his shirts. And then the how to sneak out at night, I had to watch that whole video because then when he tried to sneak out, I put little booby traps out there for him. So when he would try to sneak out, it would catch him. Because why? He's making bad choices. And this is part of what we find in our digital evidence when people make bad choices. And then the how to get money from your parents, that's easy. No one gets money at my house unless they work. So he was never going to get anything there. But know that choices that you make online are going to lead to evidence whether or not you're innocent or guilty. And in his case, he was guilty, and that's why he got grounded. So you never know what you're going to find in your digital evidence. And I think his example of YouTube is perfect for every single one of you. So here's the boring part. This is something that all of you can work on all the time. Writing and research. Google doesn't give you all the answers. You have to go out and look for it. And this is a good part of what happens in cyber and what happens in digital forensics. We have to research all those little teeny pieces to put them together. And then we have to be able to write up information to teach people what we learned. So I can't just say, it was a picture of a ball. I need to describe the ball. I need to explain how I got to the picture of the ball. All of those different things come into play. So writing and research are important skills no matter how old you are, that you can always learn and you can always improve on. I make sure I always have outlines when I'm doing writing, and I take really good notes. And you'll laugh at me because you're going to look at my notepad and go, does she really have a puppy notepad on her desk? And I do, because I love puppies. Who doesn't? But I have probably 4 or 5 different notepads on my desk, because that's making sure that my brain that is naturally doing things the wrong direction, I write it down to make sure I can remember it the right direction. So I've learned how to take good notes that help me with my learning disability, but you know what? They help everyone. I'm also really careful with the words I choose, because you cannot take them back, and that counts for what you do in writing too. So you want to make sure that you're concise and precise, which means you're careful with your words. I like to include graphics when I do different work, and then I make sure I have a very clear summary. So when you start putting things together and you want to explain them to people, it's really good to practice on your parents, because if you can explain things to your parents of what's happening in TikTok, you can explain digital evidence to just about anyone. So we have a couple questions that people ask ahead of time, and I put some information together. So a lot of you who might be just deciding to go off to college and you're thinking, how do I really get started in this? I started when I was in junior high, but the reason I got started is because I was willing to do that work. Ask people questions, ask them if they have work that you need done. All of you are part of a generation that knows life with the internet from the very beginning of your existence. That's amazing. I remember when I didn't have the internet, and I grew up in a house that didn't even have a computer. We didn't have enough money to have a computer. I only had the computer lab at school. And you know what? I still was able to be part of cyber. See where different companies that you might want to work with might be weaker. Maybe they don't understand what's on trend in social media, and you can help them because you understand that. Make sure you investigate, what are they interested in? What are they doing? All of those things are going to help you to get an internship, and you can get an internship no matter how old you are. I had an intern who was still in high school, but she was interested in the field and she asked me. That's all it took. And she did a great job doing research, and we worked on her writing skills. All you have to do is go out there and try and ask. And it would be amazing to see what responses you get. But so many of us are afraid to do so. There's no reason that it should stop you. Even being virtual, you can still work with different companies and start with internships at any age. So use your generation in your favor. You being on trend can help a lot of companies that have owners that are maybe not on trend get there much faster. And be prepared to be virtual. I'm talking to a camera right now because all of us are virtual. Get comfortable with talking to one. It's perfectly okay, but it is now part of life, and you never know when that's going to end, so be prepared to work that way. And the last thing, for those of you who are a little older, get an opportunity to present. You never know what's going to happen. I run a conference every year, and I always have college-age students do a presentation as part of that conference. Every year, those college students have gotten job offers after they've done their presentation. That's your goal at the end of the day, is to make sure you're finding somewhere that when you go to work, every day is happy and exciting for you to do it. And so it doesn't feel like work. You're excited to be there. The next I'd recommend is all of you who are thinking, okay, she's making me wonder about what I'm going to do when I'm getting older. So these are all the areas of digital forensics. You can specialize. You have to understand the fundamentals. It's kind of like everything else. You got to walk before you can run. But there are areas you can specialize in. If you really love mobile devices, that's a good area for you to specialize in. And you can learn everything you want to know about Android and Apple. And you will find an area that you can spend every day working on phones. If you like being out in the field, then maybe looking at doing live investigations or malware, that's where you want to be. If you want to be thinking about large data storage, think about the cloud. And that might be an exciting thing. The cloud is where all those other pieces of computer data is stored that's not physically located to you. You can work in databases. If you like putting puzzles together, that's a perfect area for you to work on. Make sure you have those specialized skills and study in those areas. If you really like to be on your smartphone, maybe you should try a different smartphone and learn a different operating system. If you're always on your Apple device, maybe it's time to look at switching to an Android. You never know, but you should definitely make sure you diversify your knowledge, because that's the key to being good in digital forensics. So, here are a whole bunch of careers, and I'm going to tell you all a secret that not everybody knows. That picture on there of a chef, that's what I went to college to be. I went to college as a culinary arts student, and I'm not going to cook anything for you now, but I know how to cook just about anything you can think of, and I specialized in pastry, which means I make really great cookies and different things like that. But at the end of the day, my passion lied in cyber and in doing digital forensics. But my right side of my brain, who spent its time learning about cooking and how to solve the problems with cooking, helped me to grow stronger. I don't necessarily have to directly work in cyber to find that this is a good fit for me. And the rest of it, I've added to my education and I've added to my learning by doing all those other jobs. You might be thinking, I want to start working at Starbucks, or you're already working at Starbucks. Those problem solving and your ability to multitask there is only going to help you when you start getting into the field. You just have to be a hard worker and know that you can solve the problems. That's really what being a good investigator is all about. And it's a skill that you can't learn anywhere else but inside you. It's something you have to find inside yourself. So, this is my big thing that I like to tell everyone who's thinking about this field, especially those of you who are younger. Cultivate that imagination. It can make all the difference. Nowadays, where you can Google anything, you can watch any video on how to do it, stop before you go online and think, how would you solve this problem first with just your imagination? That's what's going to make you a great investigator and make you different than someone else out there who maybe always just went for the easy answer. Push yourself to find the answer inside your own head, and then go out and do validation and make sure that what you're thinking is going to work. Instead of just picking all the leaves up in your yard with a rake, say, I bet you I could solve this problem if I put down a tarp and put them on a tarp. That will be a faster way for me to pick up those leaves. That's imagination, and that's all part of problem solving. That's just going to help you when you start looking about what you want to be when you grew up. So, wasn't that many slides, so it wasn't too bad. I will pop back over here and stop sharing my screen. There we go. Keeping that simple. That way we can do some questions for you.
Thank you, Amber. We're so excited to have you here and to have you share your journey with us. I remember, so this is nothing related to forensics. I remember you said at Osmosis you were on a Star Trek cruise. Is that right? Did I get it right?
I was. I'm a big sci-fi fan.
I love that. I love that
yes, I can do all of it.
Yeah. I can never do no.
My dog's name is
yay, finally.
Oh yeah. Live long and prosper for those of you who have no idea what we're. Yes. I'm also a Star Wars fan, so it's fair. I love them all.
Awesome. So we do have a few questions for you. When you hear about like forensic work and investigative work, I think the first question that most people think of is this work dangerous? Is digital forensic investigative work dangerous?
So I'm not going to lie and say that it's not entirely dangerous. So it's a different type of danger than what you have in person. So The type of danger you have is you're not going to see things that are always the best to see. That's the hard part of it, is when you start looking in all of those cracks and details, a lot of times you're not seeing the best side of people. If they're committing a crime, it's not their best moment. And so you have to be prepared to be able to deal with some of that harsh material that you might review. And there's a lot of ways to deal with that. For me and some of the materials I've seen, one of the big things I do is I make sure I separate my lab from where I might do my email. And the lab area is where all of those things can be seen. And then I make sure I'm on a separate machine in a separate office when I'm doing my regular everyday work. That way I know I can shut the door on it, walk away, take a moment, and then go back to it later. Because it can be really hard because there are some less than favorable things out there to see. But it's also something to remember that even as you see those, you can make a huge impact. There are not many digital forensic people that are women. There's getting more and more, which is great. But you have a different perception on it. As a female, you have a natural sense of empathy. And because of that, I think it makes it so as you review it, you're able to get a different perspective on it than maybe someone else has.
So, what was the most, like, the coolest or the most interesting forensics case that you've ever worked on? I mean, only if you're able to talk about it.
So probably the most interesting one that happened lately, and you might be surprised by it, is I was contacted by someone's mom about their son who was accused of rape. And she said he hasn't been prosecuted yet. We don't believe he did it. He's saying he is innocent, and everyone is ignoring me. And as a mom myself, I would hope that someone would take a moment and step back and say, okay, let's really look at this, because that's someone's life that's going to change based on what you do. And so we took the case and I reviewed the data with it, and he claimed he was set up. And I was like, all right, let's see what happens. And he was actually claiming he was set up in Snapchat. So it kind of matched up with some of my screenshots there. And I said, all right, let's take a look. We went through and reviewed everything. He had a ton of information on his phone. He had an iPhone. And his last internet search was actually, who is Paraben Corporation? So it was pretty funny. It's like, and then he turned his phone over to us. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Never happened before. We reviewed his data, and we did review the data in Snapchat, and he was actually correct. He was set up. He was innocent, and it's just the other people had reviewed his data, didn't find the information. And he lost a scholarship. He got kicked out of school, and he was an athlete, and he was going to go pro. And so he was losing the rest of his life over an accusation over someone who was just upset because he flirted with another girl. So it was one of those that I think out of all of the cases we've done, something that seemingly is so simple, we were able to find the innocence in it as opposed to the guilt. And that's an important part about digital forensics, is you're really looking for innocence or guilt. It's not just, I'm always looking for people to be guilty. That's not my job. It's our job is we have the burden of proof, which means we prove either side of that. And that one was probably one of the more impactful that I say I would talk about to your group versus some of the others that are also impactful. But between that to we've done wrongful deaths. We do a lot of pro bono work for people as well, just to even just help parents get the last recordings from their kids, different things like that. You get a variety.
So you mentioned earlier about farming and using a lot of IoT to farm. So
Yep.
what kind of technology do you see implementing on your IoT farm?
So when I chose to switch from living in the city to living in the farm, one of the things I wanted to do is create a cyber research center on my land. And in doing so, that was creating a bunch of different sensors to be able to look at the quality of the soil, the amount of sunlight, the water, do I have critters causing problems, different things like that. And I have a friend of mine who is big on Raspberry Pis, not the kind you bake. I'm sure I'll bake some as well, but the regular Raspberry Pis that are the digital kind. And they are, they'll create a big sensor grid. And the nice thing is when that base sensor grid is in, then hopefully I can also see how does that interact and leave evidence behind. And that's going to help me when I learn how to do an investigation in a city, because it's a similar sensor grid.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So at this time, that's a lot of times in one sentence. I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Yes, we do. Thank you. We had so many questions here still. And so I know that some of them were answered in there. I did want to point out, though, somebody asked about what to study to go into digital forensics. And I encourage you to check out Dakota State University. We have several degree programs there, as well as some certificates in digital forensics that you can get. And you can always check that out at dsu.edu. And while you're checking out Dakota State, you can check out our CybHER program that we have out of DSU. Which you can find us at cybher.org. You can also find our upcoming CybHER Conversations, which includes next week's conversation with Dr. Reem Al-Shamari and one of her Rising Star students, Megan Howell. Dr. Reem is the CISO, or the Chief Information Security Officer for Kuwait Oil Company over in Kuwait, and we are so excited to have her joining us next Wednesday along with Megan. We also have the rest of our schedule all through the end of this year up on our website now. So please be sure to go check that out. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see any CybHER conversations that you might have missed or any that you know you'll miss in the future, as well as checking out all of our other videos that we have there. And if you are not registered for our upcoming Gen Cyber virtual camp that begins in the middle of November, please go to our website. It is a free virtual camp this year since we're not able to do in-person camps, but we encourage any 6th to 9th grade girl to go to our website and register for the camp. We'll be sending off all of those camp supplies soon so that you can partake in everything. We do have a digital forensics module in there as well. But thank you to everyone. Thank you so much, Amber. And we hope to see everyone on a future conversation. Have a good night.